Good morning, fresh start. How are you this morning? These weeks seem to be getting longer and longer that we're not able to meet together in our church house or our place of worship. But I'm glad you're hanging in there with us. We had a wonderful week last week with Mother's Day out at April and Jason's, celebrating a little bit of Kathy Jones's memory and life. It was just a great day of worship. This morning we got a special treat I haven't announced to you. My wife, Amy, is going to be sharing her testimony. And we'll get started with that right away. I want to give her plenty of time. But I want us to just pray together for a moment. I don't know about you, and I'm just being honest this morning. This has been a trying week, a difficult week for me. I think I'm just getting tired of this quarantine. I'm tired of hanging out in the house and tired of not being able to get on with our plans for the future. And maybe you've had a week like that. I just want us to encourage ourselves. I want to tell you just a short little story this week that really encouraged me. I was feeling pretty discouraged. I made a trip down to Oklahoma and visited two friends. Both used to be in prison. Both are wonderful disciple makers and just on fire for the Lord. That was encouraging. I got to eat my first meal in a restaurant for the last couple of months in Springfield, Missouri, the first day that they were open back up. So that was encouraging. But what really encouraged me is when I got back home, I had a message on my WhatsApp from a dear brother in Lebanon, the country. And if we think we're going through discouragement here, I want you to know some of these other countries, the banking systems have fallen apart. They can't get their money out of the bank. There's not enough food for everybody, and they're trying to share everything that they have. He's been supportive of the refugees in Syria and the Turkish refugees that have come from Kurds, the Kurdish refugees. He started a church planting movement. He's a dynamic missionary and church planter and disciple maker. His name's George. Brother George, instead of me encouraging him like I'm trying to do all of our contacts in Africa and North Korea and the Middle East and Afghanistan and Nepal and everywhere that I've been working with Heaven's Family, George recorded a message in English just to encourage some of us. And it was a real encouragement as I listened to it yesterday. And what George said was the psalmist went through such difficult times, the psalmist David, and he had to encourage himself. That's what it says all the way through the psalm, that David encouraged himself. That's his story in Samuel, when he went through loss in his family, when he went through wars and battles, when he went through betrayal of his friends. It says that David encouraged himself. And one of the ways that he encouraged himself was with praise and worship. And I just encourage you to take personal time this week, every day, to spend a few minutes in praise and worship. Play those favorite hymns or the Gaither gatherings or whatever really speaks to your soul. We watched a movie this week about Jeremy Camp and his life, and some of the songs he's wrote, they so inspired us as a family. But take time to encourage yourself this week through praise and worship. The song that encourages me so deeply this morning, I'm not going to sing it to you. You can be happy about that. But I think it's my favorite hymn, And Can It Be? I'm just going to read a couple of verses. They encourage me, and then we'll have some time of prayer together before Amy comes and shares. And can it be that I should gain an interest in the Savior's blood? Died he for me, who caused his pain, for me, who him to death pursued. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? He left his Father's throne above So free, so infinite his grace, emptied himself of all but love, and bled for Adam's helpless race. 'Tis mercy all immense and free, for oh my God, it found out me. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? And then this is my favorite verse that speaks my testimony, I think, and encourages me. I hope it will encourage you. Long my prison spirit lay, fast bound in sin and nature's night. Thine eyes diffused a quickening ray. I woke, the dungeon flamed with light. My chains fell off, my heart was free. I rose, went forth, and followed thee. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? No condemnation now I dread, Jesus, and all in him is mine. Alive in him, my living head, and clothed in righteousness divine. Bold I approach the eternal throne and claim the crown through Christ my own. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? That encourages me to know his love is everlasting. It's eternal. There's no end to it. He loved me when I was in the prison of sin and darkness. He loves me when I'm doing well and when I'm discouraged. He loves me when my performance is excellent and up to par. He loves me when I miss the mark, fall short, have a bad attitude, thoughts that aren't from King Jesus. He loves me. He died for me. There's no greater love. I'd like for us to take a few moments of silence. And right now, I'd like for you to push everything else out of your mind except Jesus. Kind of clear your mind of the clutter and the distractions and the busyness and your worries, your anxieties. And let's have a few moments of silence and you just think about Jesus, who loves us, who died for us, who's on the throne, who stands at the right hand of God interceding for us. I'm going to count to 3, and then we're going to take just 30 seconds or a minute of silence. Clear your mind. Focus on Jesus. Will you do that this morning? 1, 2, 3. Lord Jesus, may we just breathe in your presence, breathe in your praise, and just exhale and kind of rid ourselves of all worry and anxiety and distractions. We've come this morning to worship you. You alone are worthy. I pray you'll meet every need of this congregation. The families, the children, the finances, the sicknesses, whatever it is, wherever people are gathered listening to this message today, that you would touch them, you would be near them, they would feel and experience your presence. Lord Jesus, meet with us this morning. Though we're scattered across the miles, we are one in you. And you care for us, and we cast all of our care upon you. Help us to focus on you for a few minutes, to share a testimony of what you've done in one life, but what you're willing to do in every life. You want to transform us and change us and fill us, and we want to keep walking with you. Thank you, Lord, for this time. Anoint this time we share together. And bless Amy as she shares from her heart. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good morning, Fresh Start family. I get the privilege this morning to be here and to share with you my testimony. This is only the second time that I've ever shared this, and so I'm excited to let you guys get to know me a little bit better. And I'm going to just start out from the very beginning. I was born the second teenage pregnancy of my mom's. She had had my brother when she was 17 and then had me when she was 19. My brother and I had different dads, and neither of our dads were involved in our lives growing up. The story is that my dad was there when I was born, but then he left and decided that he didn't want anything to do with me, and my mom was fiercely independent, and so she wanted to do everything by herself, and that's just what she had decided to do. And so my mom growing up was a hard worker. She always kept jobs and worked really hard to provide for us. About the time that I was in first grade, my mom had a boyfriend that moved in with us, and he was not a very nice man. My brother and I, neither one liked him, and the years that he lived with us was a lot of turmoil for us. He would drink a lot, and he would be angry, and there would be fights in the house, and a lot of times he would tear things up in the house, and there was a lot of drug stuff going on in and out of our house. I can remember times where the police would raid our house, and just a lot of dysfunction going on. And there came a point, I think my fourth grade year, the summer of after my fourth grade year, that there was one day when my brother and I were neither one home, thank goodness, that he got very violent. Before, he had never physically abused my mom, but that day things changed, and he had beaten my mom literally from head to toe till she was just bruised and beaten everywhere, and then tried to take her life by cutting open the waterbed and trying to drown her in it. And she was able to get away from him and run to the neighbors and call the police. And then after that, she thankfully left him. But that was just a lot of the kind of stuff that we grew up with those years. After she left him, started kind of a new chapter in our lives where she was gone a lot. She would be gone working a lot of hours, or she'd be gone to the bars, drinking and partying with friends and stuff like that. She just wasn't home a whole lot. At school, there was this custodian that worked there that had kind of taken notice, I think, that I was going through a lot of emotional stuff. I had a year where I went to school, and every day I would go crying, and I can remember not being able to control it. And every day I would go to the nurse's office and say I was sick and try to get sent home, and the nurse had kind of caught on to what was going on, and she would always just send me back to class. But that year, the custodian had invited me to come to church with him. And I started going to church, and him and his wife invited me and my brother, and they would invite us to their home and help us with homework and do different things with us, and we'd play with their kids, and they just really took an interest in us. And I became what I would call a bus kid at that church. Every time the doors were open, the church bus would come and get me, and I'd go to church. And my brother kind of took a different road. He ended up getting into a lot of trouble and ended up in juvenile detention, and just was always in trouble. For me, going to church and seeing families there was finding something that I was longing for, something different than everything that I'd grown up with, everything that I'd seen. And there's such a pull in my heart to want something different than I had grown up with. And I found Jesus there in that church, and so many people there had invested in my life over those years. Sunday school teachers, youth workers, children's ministry people, and just different people in the church. And I would be in some of their homes. I'd go home with them on Sunday mornings and come back Sunday evenings, and they just really spent a lot of time investing in my life. And then after that, I think my junior year of high school, I met a young man and fell in love and decided that my senior year that we wanted to get married. He was going to go and work for the police department in Kansas City, Missouri, and I wanted to go with him when he went, and so we decided we were going to get married. But I was only 17 at the time, and so I had to have my mom's signature, and we had to talk the pastor into doing the ceremony. And so we got both of those things done, and when I was 17, a month before I graduated high school, we got married. And then not long after that, we moved to Kansas City. And then 2 years into that marriage, we had a son named Justin. And things were going really well. He was youth pastor at the church where we were attending, and life was just really good. For the first time, I felt like I had this perfect little family, maybe not perfect, but really good. From what I had growing up, I had this little family, and I felt like life was really, really good. And I wish at this point I could say that it was happily ever after at that point, but unfortunately I can't. It wasn't long after that. Justin was, I think, 2 years old when Mike came to me and said that he wanted a divorce. And I was shocked at that point that he came and said that. I was not expecting it at all. And it wasn't long after that I found out that he had been having an affair with a friend of mine, and it was a girl that I went to school with from kindergarten all the way through high school. And so it was really devastating to me that happened. And so going through divorce literally is like a ripping and tearing of flesh. And not only was it a loss and a mourning for myself, but I felt like it was a loss and mourning for my son and the dreams that I had for him, because he wasn't going to grow up in this family that I wanted him to grow up in, but he was going to have to grow up in this divorced home. And so I had to mourn that loss too. And also I had to figure out what I was going to do, because I had not gone to college, and I just moved to Kansas City following him to do his police work. And so my mom at that point had moved in with another boyfriend. She was still drinking a lot, and I couldn't take my 2-year-old son and go live there. And so at that time, one of the couples that had been my youth pastors from my hometown had moved to Bethalto, Illinois, and were associate pastors for Dave at the church that he was pastoring at the time. And they had been like parents to me throughout my high school years. And I had spent a lot of time with them on and off throughout the years, and actually called them mom and dad, and they treated me just like a daughter. They kept my picture up on their mantle with their daughters, and I just really loved them, and they had just been really special people in my life. And so they talked to me and said, why don't you bring your son and come live with us? And so that's what I did. I brought Justin here to Illinois, and we moved in with them. I started taking some college classes, and I had a job. And at that time I was fighting for custody of Justin also as we were going through this divorce. And I was terrified because I didn't have my own place to live. Mike has this good job with this city, and he has a place to live, and he's telling me things like he knows this judge in family court because he's in her court all the time, and there's no way I'm going to win custody, and I was terrified. And so the day of court, my attorney beforehand tells me, hey, this is how it's going to go. You're going to go in there. You guys are both going to present your sides, and afterwards the judge will take it under advisement. There will be nothing decided today, and so no judgment. And so we went in. That's what happened. We both gave our sides. It was kind of a long, draining day. And then at the end, we leave, go out to sit and wait. Our attorneys had to go in, talk with the judges. And my attorney walks out, and he said, I can't believe this just happened, but the judge came back with a judgment today, and she is giving you full custody of your son with full decision-making rights because she doesn't think you guys will be able to agree on anything, so you get to make all educational and medical decisions for your son. And I just could not believe that, that had happened. I guess I should have believed that that was going to happen. I should have trusted God that he was going to do something that big for me. But he knew my heart. He knew, I think, what I had gone through, and that I needed my son, and that I had been faithful to him through all of that. And so it wasn't long after that Dave and I started dating. He had been through divorce at the same time, I think, and so we had some things in common there that we were going through. And then we had decided to get married, blending our families. He had 2 daughters, and I had Justin. So we were, our kids had all just been through divorce, and so we did a lot of family counseling in the beginning, and then we had Amber, and she's the only kid that we've had together, and we called her the glue of the family because she was a part of everybody. So then everybody had something invested in our family. And not long after that, then we started fostering and adopting kids, and Dave and I think we had this dream that we were gonna start fostering kids and helping parents, and this was gonna be this really great thing. We're gonna start helping kids, and then we're going to help their parents, and we'll reunite kids back with their parents, and we can help a lot of people, and this is going to be this really great thing. And then I think God had something else completely different in mind. And so the first 2 boys come to us, and they're not with us but maybe even a year, I don't think. And then the caseworker says, hey, these parents aren't going to get it together. Would you guys want to adopt these boys? And of course, by that time, we've already fallen in love with them. They're already a part of our family, and so, what do we say but yes? And so we adopted them, and then that just kept happening over and over again, and nobody ever went back home. And so we ended up, that's how we got 12 kids. And so, I never dreamed I was going to grow up and have 12 kids, but that's what happened. And so Dave and I have been through a lot together over the years. We've lost parents together, and my mom being an alcoholic, it got the best of her. In the end, she ended up getting really sick between smoking and drinking, and she died when she was only 57, and it was a really hard thing for me. And it was a rough life growing up, but there was a lot of good things about her too, and she ended up being a much better grandmother than she was a mom, and so losing her was really hard for me. And we've had a lot of heartache with our kids, and still to this day we have a lot of heartache with some of our kids. When you foster kids that have been through a lot of turmoil, then there's a lot of baggage that they come with and a lot to go through. And even with biological kids, there's a lot of times they make bad decisions, and a lot of hurt as parents. I think probably a lot of you can relate with that you go through. And living life with Dave is always an adventure, because Dave dreams a new dream almost every day. And so through the years, Dave will come home and have a new dream, and sometimes they come to be and sometimes they don't. But some of the bigger ones are him coming home and say, how about living in an old Catholic church? We're going to change this building and we'll make it a home. And I'm not like a visionary. He had to draw a picture because I couldn't see it. And so it came to be. And I think before I had married Dave, I probably could count on one hand how many states I'd been to. And now I've been all over the U.S. and I couldn't even tell you how many countries I've been to doing missions and just traveling. And somewhere in all of that chaos of fostering kids and adopting, I decided it'd be a great idea to go to nursing school. And so we endured, I think, 3 years of me going to nursing school, and Dave probably had to carry a big load during that time. My mom was still around and she helped a lot, and somehow we made it through those 3 years of me going to nursing school. And then I think one of the harder things that we've been through has been this last year with Ellie. When she was 11, she started having back pain, lower back pain, and I had taken her to the doctor several times, to the hospitals, and telling them about it, and I'd always just get that it was growing pains or different things, and it just didn't sit right with me that that's what it was. And so we moved to Florida and took her to the doctor there again to see if we could find out something different, and they couldn't find anything. All the x-rays would never show anything. And so finally they sent us to an orthopedic doctor there, where they found out that she had some scoliosis. But the doctor said that shouldn't be causing her to have that much pain. So sometimes you can have something else that causes her to have scoliosis that could also be causing the pain. But your insurance won't pay for an MRI unless you do physical therapy. And after that, if you still have pain, your insurance will pay for the MRI. And so she'd started through physical therapy. I think she had like maybe one session left before she would be done, and then Hurricane Michael hit. And so there was so much devastation where we lived. Our kid's doctor's office was wiped out. Where she did physical therapy was wiped out. The kids were out of school for a time, and things were just changing. Where we were just wasn't a good fit anymore, and so we just decided to come back to Illinois. And at the time it was a really hard choice for us to make and hard to move back. The kids, none of them were happy about it. They loved Florida, we loved Florida, but now looking back I can see God's hand in it, because there were no children's hospitals where we were that could have given Ellie the care that she needed. And after we got back here, she had to go through all the same stuff again, had to restart physical therapy, and we found out that she had tumors in her spinal cord and cancer. And so we've been dealing with that this last year, and as a parent, it has been so difficult to watch Ellie struggle in pain. And even last night she was hurting, and I find myself sometimes getting angry or bitter that she has to live in so much pain every day. And sometimes when I'm looking back at pictures of her when she was little and she was walking and her leg was normal, and I just grieve that loss for her, wondering if she'll ever live without pain again, or be able to walk again, and those kind of questions in my mind. And so I have to remind myself to keep my eyes on Jesus and not wander away from that. So it's been a really rough year for us, struggling through all that she's had to go through. As a teenager in church, I remember listening to people telling their testimonies, and I kept thinking, when I grow up, I want to have a testimony like that. And I did grow up and I got a testimony. It wasn't quite the one I wanted to have, though. And at some point in my journey, I started to question the Lord, and I started listening to the enemy and what he was saying to me. And he was saying things to me like I was a mistake. You know, my mom was a teenager, and when she got pregnant, I wasn't, wanted. My dad didn't want me. Several times throughout the years I've tried to connect with him, and I've always just been turned away. I felt unloved. When you have a husband that says till death do you part, and then he chooses to walk away from you, the rejection that you feel in that is devastating. And the enemy was saying things to me like, I'm not good enough. I'm destined to be just like everybody else in my family. There's so many alcoholics and so much drug addiction and things in my biological family. And I had friends in high school whose parents wouldn't let me come to their sleepovers or whatever because they knew what my brother was like, or they knew my family, or whatever. I was just not good enough to be their friend or something. And he would say things to me like I'm not worthy. When I was a teenager and my mom was working nights or at the bars, my house was always the fun place to be for my friends. They thought it was cool that they could be there, and we could go out and do whatever because there's nobody there to supervise. But for me, it felt like nobody cared. I wasn't worthy of a parent to be there to set boundaries and to care enough to want me to be safe, or all my friends had rules and boundaries, and I didn't have that. To me, it said their parents cared and mine didn't. Probably wasn't the case that my mom didn't care. It's just that she, had to do what she had to do for work, and I don't know what was going through her mind, but to me it just made me feel like I wasn't loved and worthy. And then the enemy was saying, this is the big one I think he really would get me with, was that nobody liked me. And I think I would know that people would like me sometimes, but I would think if they really knew me, if they really knew what was inside of me, they wouldn't like me. And a few years ago, when Paul and Ellie were probably 1 and 2, our family spent a few months in the summer at a missionary boot camp and did some training there. And sometimes at night, some of us students would get together in the commons area, and we would have these just spontaneous breakout sessions where we would come together and worship. We had one of the students there was a songwriter, singer, and she was really gifted in that, and she would play the piano, and we would just worship together, and sometimes then we would share with each other. It was just this amazing time that we would have together sometimes. And one night when we were having one of these times, there's this guy there named Marty, and he's this kind of hippie guy, and everybody loved Marty. He's just this really cool guy. People are just attracted to him, his friendship, and I just can't explain this guy, but everybody loved Marty. And Marty was a worshiper, and he loved Jesus with everything that he was. And he's one of those guys that's just really honest about everything, and he just tells it to you like it is. And in that breakout session that night, Marty said exactly what I just said. He said, I just feel like nobody really likes me. He goes, I know people like me, I have friends all over the place and people like me, but if they really knew who I was on the inside, people wouldn't like me. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at Marty like, he is crazy. He tells people how he's feeling, and when he messes up, he shares that with people, and that's what we like about Marty, that his honesty and all these things, that's a lie from the enemy, that people don't like him. And when I went to my room that night and I'm laying there and I'm thinking about how the enemy is lying to Marty, the Lord spoke to me and is like, Amy, if that's a lie from the enemy that he's speaking to Marty, could that be a lie from the enemy that he's speaking to you? And that moment was life-changing for me, because I realized that I was listening to the enemy tell a lie. And I had to start learning to hear from Jesus and his voice, and what's his voice and what's the enemy's voice, and what's Jesus' character. Is it his character to say things to us like, I'm a mistake, or I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, things like that. In Psalms 139, starting at verse 13 through 18, it says, "For you formed my inward parts, you covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written. The days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O God! How great is the sum of them! If I should count them, they would be more in number than the sand." That really just spoke to my heart. We lived in Florida, and we had sand everywhere. And so the thought of his thoughts being more, the number of them being more than the sand, is just unfathomable in my mind. And I saw this illustration on Facebook one time, so it's not an original thought of mine, and maybe some of you have seen it, I don't know. But if you take a glow stick, and if you want it to glow or to shine, you have to break it and then shake it up before it's going to shine. And if you think about it in our lives, that's what it's like in our lives. A lot of times we have to be broken and shaken up for us to shine for Jesus. In my life, there's been a lot of brokenness, and yes, there have been times where my world has been shaken up, but without that, those things happening, I don't think my life would have shined for Jesus as much as it does. And my brokenness isn't your brokenness necessarily. There are things that you've gone through that I probably haven't gone through. Like maybe infertility, or being a widow, having cancer. There's just all different kinds of things. Addiction. I've lived with addiction as a child of somebody addicted, but never been addicted myself. We can't change these things that happen to us, but we can change what we do with them. And I think as a church, as a body, when somebody new walks through the door, we can all use these different things in our lives to reach different people. If somebody walks in and they're a widow, I can't relate to them like somebody else in the church who's a widow could relate to them. But I can relate to the foster kids who come into my home and have had brokenness and dysfunction and different things like that. The Lord has used those things in my life to relate to these kids that have been there. And he's given me this passion to reach out to kids and teenagers and to help them through these times that they've gone through, and to want to, just minister in their lives and to help them. And today I just want to leave you with one question, and that's, what lies are the enemy saying to you? And I just challenge you to take those lies and replace them with the truth from Jesus.
Thank you, sweetheart. I had the privilege of hearing this testimony, but watching it lived out. And it's still very special to me. I hope you'll take the truth to heart. I think sometimes we just need to look in the mirror every day and speak the truth as we know it in Jesus Christ. Not what we're feeling, not what our thoughts are. Remember the table where we have to weigh everything and then surrender it to King Jesus? That's a lifelong lesson. I hope you will be strengthened and blessed by hearing Amy's testimony. Incredible lady. I do want to make a couple of announcements as we look forward to the future. I do believe we're winding down this lockdown and things are going to return to a new normal, perhaps. But next Sunday, Brian and Debbie Pope invited us out to their farm. And I know it's a little distance for some of you, but it's a beautiful place. It's supposed to be sunshiny. If the weather changes, our plans may change. But I would encourage you to come and join with us at 10:30 because of the extra distance we have to travel. And bring your lunch. Call it a picnic, call it a carry-in dinner, whatever you want to do. We're going to have fun and games with the kids. We're going to have worship. I'm going to ask the Lord to help us have some live worship there, and we're working on that. We will do some of the fun things that we didn't get to do at Easter with the kids. So it's going to be a great day, and we'll get to share our hearts together. If you can't come, we'll still record and then post the message later. And it seems like Facebook Live was working well today. But we'll be posting it as well and a YouTube link so that we can get this out to as many people as we can to be touched by the ministry of Fresh Start Church. So that's our only announcement really is next week. We take this a week at a time. Maybe by the 31st we'll be able to open up and have a regular service. I think that's when Lifebrook in Bethalto is going to open up their service. So we'll be talking about that, praying about that. Also, we'll be having an annual meeting in June. We'll get those details out to you to adopt the budget and some ministry plans, perhaps installation plans for the pastor, perhaps homecoming, perhaps some great days of celebration, and some plans to start some small groups. So all of those things I ask you to be praying about and thinking about, and let's commit the ministry of Fresh Start to whatever direction God wants to take us in the future. So thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting Amy and our big family and our chaos. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for giving us a place to serve. May Jesus and his Holy Spirit just be near you and with you day by day this next week. May you be able to let go of the distractions and worship and focus on him. And may you tell yourself the truth as it comes from God's word and it comes from Jesus and his Spirit, and not believe the lies of the enemy. May God bless you till we meet again. Have a great day.